Hello, I'm Herm Gailey. We're here on a warm Sunday morning, and kind of the whole family's together. Go on, Josie. And Josie's included in. She's a 4-year-old mare that I've been riding quite a bit, but very few other people have ridden her. Now, the theme of our video today is going to be introducing a young horse to a different rider. At some point, you don't want your young horse to become a one-rider wonder. You don't want them to become a one-person horse. So you begin to maybe let some other folks ride them. But you want to do that with a little bit of sense. Come on, Jose. So I'm moving her around here a little bit because today Dalton is going to ride her. He's my son-in-law. If you've watched our channel a bit, you've seen other videos in which we victimized him. And it's his turn again, and he usually takes it in good part. I will tell you that Dalton is what I would call a talented but relatively unexperienced rider. And that's actually a good thing for this mare, because he's going to know how to get along with her, but she's going to have to fill in a little bit, and they're going to have to work together. So my goal will just be to show you what I do when I introduce a new rider to a horse that is not real finished. So I'm just moving her around here just because she's got a different saddle on than what she has carried before. And I wanted to make sure that all was well. And she looks pretty mild. She's loping along there real nice. So I'm not trying to tire her out. I just want to make sure she's not bound up anyway. You want to look at me, Josie? Yep, come on in. So you'll notice we're in the round pen. Very often, maybe most times, I would ride the horse first. I'm not going to do that today because it has a different saddle than I usually use on, and more important, I just rode her yesterday. She was fine, so riding her today is not going to make much difference. But if you were to have a young horse, or even your more finished horse, not a bad idea to make sure they're comfortable with things like a different piece of equipment, or to ride them a little bit yourself to make sure that there's nothing going on that you need to know about. But I think we're in good shape there. We're also in the round pen. Odds are there is no need to start this process in the round pen. But I'll just relate that a few years ago, quite a few years ago, I had a nice gelding that I wanted to sell, and a gal came to look at him, and I put her on out in the main pen, which, as you'll recall, has no sides on it. We have it constructed that way. She stepped up on the horse. I knew she had ridden in the past, but she was of the school of thought that you got on and you gripped with your knees. She got on the horse, she gripped with her knees, and Kim, maybe you can pan over there and at least show generally, to the extent you can get the angle where you would be in the pen. And this horse, feeling that grip, thought, okay, I'm going to lope off. That's a cue to go forward. So he loped off and went to the woods there. When she continued to grip, he thought, well, I guess she wants to go somewhere, and he turned left down the driveway. And he loped roughly 800 feet down the driveway. As she entered the driveway, she looked over her shoulder and she shouted, "Help me!" And at that point, I was doing sort of an advanced hobble to try to keep up with her and see where she was going. She, in fact, loped the whole way down the driveway. The horse crossed the public road there, which is barely a road, but probably not the best thing to lope across without stop, look, and listen. Turned right and loped probably 300 yards out to another woods, at which point he thought, this can't be right, and he just stopped. Had I started her in the round pen, the worst thing he would have done was make a couple circles till I said, hey, loosen up. Now, to her credit, this gal came back. We put her on in the round pen. She was game enough to ride him. She didn't grip him. He went off great. They bought the horse and they owned him for 28 years. So that's a happy ending to that story. On the other hand, could have gone bad, so I like to start people in the round pen. So if you have an enclosed, confined area, good place to begin this process. So Dalton, you want to come out and do your thing. So as is usually the case, we were just getting together a little bit this Sunday morning. I neglected to tell Dalton he was going to be on camera. So he's relaxed, which is good for a Sunday morning. And he is wearing a shirt that advertises the Great Lebanon Fair, which is just up the road from us, one county over. So if you're in the area, the Great Lebanon Fair is when, August?
It's the last week of July.
Last week of July. So it's a good fair. They have some horse events there. So a little free advertising for the Lebanon area fair. So what we're going to do is just put Dalton on this mare and let him move her around the round pen. And more so than me picking at you and telling you what to do, you're fairly familiar with the program. Just get on, move her around and get to know her. Just sort of get a feel for her, and I'll give you some odds and ends along the way. So I'm going to watch her as you get on. That's just one tad. And you did the right thing. You checked your saddle. If it's tight, good. If it's not, we'll tighten it. Okay. I might give that one little tug. She's sort of round, so I ride her a little tighter than most. Okay, we'll just even up your reins, put her out there, and let her sort of stroll around the outside. And our goal here is not for me to micromanage you or the horse. Really what I'm after is not advancing anything, not really instructing anything, but just making sure you two get along. More important than you have a good ride on her and she has a good experience with you. That'll be another horse on your life list. You know, because one thing that we find is a lot of people get to ride one or two horses. Dalton's been on an awful lot of horses because we often just chuck him on whatever we have available, and he's always been a good sport about it. So she's staying real nice and soft in the bridle. One thing to remember is she will give more than you realize sometimes, so you don't want to get her overflexed. But bending her around and steering her is good, like you did. It's the equivalent of shaking hands with her. To get to know her, she gets to know what your hands feel like. Now, we all have strengths and weaknesses. Dalton's strength is, and we've teased him about this, but it's a good thing, he's a big guy, but he's got hands like a girl. Well, I happen to think most girls may have better hands than us guys do because they're not relying on strength as much. Dalton has always had a nice, quiet hand. This mare is very soft, so it's one reason why I thought Dalton would be a good person to climb on her. Three other people have ridden her. My friend Melanie started her because I was coming back from shoulder surgery, rode her 3 or 4 times early on, and we had some folks come by the other week because I'm thinking of selling this mare, and my friend AJ Baginski and his girlfriend both rode her and both got along with her real well. So just give her a little squeeze and let her trot off. Don't restrain her too much, just let her sort of find a pace. Yeah. And just see how little you can do. So at this point, I know that being in the round pen was probably unnecessary, but better safe. There you go. Now, one thing you'll find is a little outside rein will bring her around and she won't overbend. She's really nice and soft laterally, but she tends to overbend just a tad bit. So she'll sort of run through her shoulder because of that. There you go, and see how she stayed a little straighter and a little more accurate. So it's good to know that you got steering. It looks like you do. Dalton's doing the right thing. He's riding her two-handed. This mare will ride around one-handed, but there's no need to up the degree of difficulty when you're getting to know a new young horse. Biggest thing I'm after isn't technical perfection, but a sort of a sense of harmony between the two of them. Because if you've got that, then you can move on to the technical things. That was nice because you evened out your turns. You began your transition to the other direction right in the middle. And without being told, you figured out that you'd been a little steep before, a little abrupt. That time you nailed the center, and the two ends to that change in direction were the same size. That was nice. I also think you were trying to run me over, but so when you're ready, just sit down and say, whoa. Good. And release your reins. Good. Looks like everybody's relaxed. Just to see how good she is off your hands, just pick up on her and back her a few steps. There you go. And that you can feel she was a little unsure. That's just the different rider. That's okay. Every horse has to adapt to differences in riders. And some of these more experienced horses will immediately know what's being asked for. If they're nice horses, they deliver it, even if the message isn't perfect. Younger horses tend to require a more perfect message. In that way, they can make you better riders. But for a while, it's going to look like you're just getting adjusted, like breaking in a new pair of boots. So we can go off camera for a minute. I'm going to get a horse. We'll go out into the bigger pen and ride a little bit more. We're outside now in the bigger pen. As you can see, there are no sides on it, so that the horse is not really confined. And what I'm having Dalton do now is just build a circle around me to get a little feel for how she steers when she's out in the open and how she's going to be away from the safety of the round pen. And you could probably spread that circle out just a bit. The reason why I'm having him go around me isn't just so I can heckle him, which I'm not going to do a whole lot, but more so because I'm a magnet. And when you're getting somebody used to riding a green horse for the first time and you don't want to get them insecure, if you establish yourself as sort of the safety zone or the home base, that lets that person orbit you. You can talk to them if you need to, you can observe the horse, but more important, the horse feels like they've got a center and a friend that they can turn to. So all we're doing is going out here and doing the very low key stuff we were doing in the round pen. Just moving her around, going in circles, and you can, whenever you want, you can double back in front of me and change directions, or behind me, whichever works better, and then just make another circle the other direction. And what's nice here is these two are learning to get along, and I want to give them a little bit of slack. If I was not making a video, what I'd probably do is just warm my horse up and turn Dalton loose, because he would do fine, and let him ride her for 15, 20, 30 minutes. We're going to sort of abbreviate that a little bit, because nobody needs to watch something as dull as I hope this is going to be. But she seems to be walking around nice. Why don't you step her up into a trot? And what you've done is, the pen was just dragged, you can see where your footprints were from your other circle. Just sort of try to stay relatively close to those tracks, maybe on the outside of them, to give yourself a little bit more room when you're trotting. And I would establish that circle and just go a few more rotations around before you turn her. That was fine, but that's relatively, it's not demanding, but it's new to her to have somebody else do it. Funny thing is, when you've started a horse and ridden them a lot, you become ridiculously protective of them. You know, it's like, I know Dalton's not going to do anything uncivilized, but that's like my girlfriend there. And I'm like, this is Dalton's first date with her, and I'm in the back seat. I'm like the trunk monkey in the back seat. you know, keeping an eye on everything, and it can sort of spoil the date, and I'm pretty aware that I can do that. But everybody's loosening up nice. What I like too is, instead of restraining her, Dalton is keeping in touch with her mouth, but he's not holding her back, he's not dragging on her, and he's also not asking her to jog like a Western pleasure horse. Yeah, and if you want, you can make a loop to the outside if you want to give yourself more room, because I realize this is kind of tight, and I'm in the way here too. Now when you're ready, just sit down on her, stop her, loosen up your reins. Oh, you can back her a step, sure. And just see if she'll stand there nice and quiet, which she's doing. Now maybe just turn her in her tracks and go the other direction. Turn to the outside, turn to the outside. I said I wasn't gonna micromanage, guess what I'm doing? I'm micromanaging. There you go, and she's made sort of a loose, loopy turn, but that's okay. She was compliant. This mare I like a lot. She's what I'd call a slow learner, and that means I've done a lot more riding than training. I've put a lot of miles on this horse without trying to teach her a whole lot, just getting her comfortable with having somebody riding her and directing her movement and interacting with her. And she's really started to come around to where she says, well, what else do you want, boss? And that's the attitude that I want. That's the attitude that I really appreciate. And the nice thing about slow learners, the thing I kind of like about them is, if you have one of these horses like this little horse here that learns real fast, oh, that's cool. Except if you make a mistake, you got to work a long time to rub that out. Where with a slower learner, they'll forgive you because maybe they weren't going to get it that time anyway. So, you know, it all works out pretty good. You may not be able to see it on video, but I've got a mare turned out here that's galloping around the outside in the pasture, and that's why she raised up and looked, which most of them will do. Okay, when you're ready, stop her, let her stand a second, and then see if you can turn her right back gently in her tracks. Tip her nose with your right hand, come across with your left. Good. See how she's tightening up her steering a little bit. That's good. Now we could get greedy and lope her, and I suspect that would go okay, but it would be maybe one bridge too far. So what I'm thinking we want to do, break her down to a walk, and we're going to sort of cut the umbilical cord, and I would say up there at the end of the pen, and it probably won't show up on camera, there's a bulldozer and a bunch of building materials from our house project. Why don't you just ride her out of the pen, turn her left, or turn her right, excuse me, ride her through the gate and circle around on the driveway. So she's on her own and she's out of this safety zone here. Probably if I was a nicer father-in-law, I would have had this horse in front of her. But I think they've got a nice thing going, and let's see how it goes if she turns to her rider for security instead of an outside figure. None of the horses like that end of the arena. They like it even less when you have stuff moved in. And she's no exception. So we'll see if she goes through there. I think we can still see her on camera okay. If you can see it, she just passed the bulldozer. She's going in past some leftover building materials from tearing out these fences. In a previous episode, I mentioned that we needed to renew the end fence, and we've done that. And she couldn't be a whole lot better, and that's real pleasing to me. And it's probably pleasing as hell to Dalton to be out there where he can't hear me. Because I said I wasn't going to micromanage, and then I was yammering at him the whole damn time. That's the nature of the beast. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bid you guys farewell, and we're going to go off into the woods where all the good stuff really happens. So maybe Kim can track us. We actually have to go past some more scary stuff, so we're just going to go out across just a little bit. And this mare here is just as likely to jump as that one, because this one's a bit of a spook. Well, may as well cover some ground.